Well, here we are on day 3 of Mark 13, and I hope that it's been helpful to you. We're now going to finish the chapter, verses 28, actually, through verse 36. And this basically explains and helps us today to get ready for it. It explains the tribulation. Notice what it says, verse 28. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know the summer is near. Well, we already saw when the birth pangs come, we know that the birth is near. So here, when the fig tree has its leaves, you know that summer is near. Now learn the parable. Even so, will you too, when you see these things happening, recognize that he is here, he is right at the door. Now here's the key. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Truly I say to you, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. Now, what does it mean by this generation will not pass away? Well, when I was growing up, way back when, a number of years ago, I was taught that the generation that saw Israel become an independent nation would be the generation that would see the coming of Christ. Now, Israel became a nation in 1948, so you figure 40 years to a generation. Therefore, the coming of Christ should have happened in the late 80s. But as we see, here we are in 2020, and he hasn't come yet. We don't know when he's going to come. We do know that we are closer today than we were yesterday, and we'll be closer tomorrow than we are today. But when he comes, we don't know. But I don't think that was accurate theology. I believe what it's saying here in verse 30, when it says, this generation will not pass away. I believe it is the generation that saw the birth pangs, and Matthew 24 even speaks to it a little more clearly. The generation that sees the birth pangs, the generation that is involved in the tribulation period, is the generation that's going to see the coming of Christ, because it's 7 years for the tribulation. So that's the generation that's going to see Christ return on his white horse as a warrior and kill all the unbelievers and bring the believers to himself. That's the generation that's going to see it. And it says in verse 32, but of that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. Interesting that even the Son, even though he is God of very gods, that he has chosen not to know things in his incarnated state, but only the Father truly knows. And so what we see here is we see that this is like a parable, like the parable of fig tree, whereas that generation is going to see the coming of Christ. Now that doesn't mean it's not close, and it doesn't mean that possibly some of us might be around to see the coming of Christ. Certainly to be a part of the rapture, which comes before the tribulation. I pray that would happen. I pray that I would not die and that I could see the rapture, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But we all hope it does, and we all think it might because it is getting closer. Now, he finishes up the chapter with a sort of an exhortation. And the exhortation is in verse 35, stay on the alert. Now, I don't have to tell you what's going on today in the world. We have seen things in the last few months that I would have never seen in my whole lifetime. We have seen a virus that has affected the entire world. We have seen riots, rebellion against law enforcement, riots, racial riots, and others. We have just seen things that I never expected to see. We have seen sin like I've never expected to see in abortion and LGBTQ and other things. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And what do we do with that? Well, I would think that most of the world, because they don't know Christ, they don't have that hope, that there is great fear, that there is depression, that there is anxiety, and just a confusion as to what's going to go on in the future. But I think that for us as believers, I think we can be confident. I don't think we have to be anxious or depressed, because the Bible does say, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks. And the Bible also clearly indicates that God is sovereign. He is absolutely sovereign, and there is no accident with him, that everything that's happening is for a purpose, for a reason. Whether it be the riots, whether it be the virus, whatever it is, there's a reason for why it's happening. And I think in light of this chapter, I think we as believers can rest in the fact that Christ is coming. And we can rejoice in the fact that when he comes, he will bring us to himself, and that we will have eternal life. Now, I can't comprehend what eternal is, but it is so much better, infinitely better than anything we could ever hope for. And so I would just encourage you, as you are about ready to finish the book of Mark now, and have read through a number of wonderful, wonderful passages, that you set your hope on Christ, and you set your hope on his coming. Because we aren't going to change the world. The world belongs to Satan. And we're in a spiritual battle, unlike anything we've seen. And I think we need to be just ready to live our lives every day as he would want us to do what he wants us to do, to say what he wants us to say, to trust him, to delight in him, to commit ourselves to him, to be patient, because he's in charge. I pray almost every day. I pray to the God. I said, I plan my way, but you direct my steps. Proverbs 16:9. And that's what I want, and that's what I hope that you want. So as we finish these 3 messages, I trust that it has been meaningful to you, and I trust that you will hope in the coming of Christ. Have a great day.